We'll get to your Oregon Ducks in a second. You're still gloating. I can see it. I don't even have to ask you a question about that. It's so obnoxious. Whatever. So let me ask you this. So Belichick says, hey, we were going to use both quarterbacks. There's a running back and a receiver that said, we didn't know we were going to use both quarterbacks. So let me ask you, would you know going into a game if it was a 2-quarterback week?
Yeah, absolutely, you would know, because the guys would split reps with the ones. You get a certain amount of reps in practice, right? And those reps are taken up by the one quarterback. It's all the reps with the ones, and then the scout team is number 2. And so you would know if you're a player, if you split reps between Zappe and Mac Jones, that we were doing a 2-quarterback system heading into the game. Maybe Belichick had it in his mind, but if you're not preparing both quarterbacks to play with the reps in the game plan, what are we doing with the quarterbacks?
Yeah. Okay, here's the other question. Bill Barnwell is a very smart guy at ESPN. And Barnwell suggested, he said, and you know this, when you start a business, if you make a mistake, don't be rigid. Move off it. Don't double down on your mistakes. And I think a lot of general managers do. And Barnwell said, between Brandon Ayuk, you could get some draft capital back because you got enough receivers. Jennings and Deebo Samuel and Danny Gray and George Kittle, you got enough weapons. And he also said you have to consider moving Trey Lance. And I wouldn't move him now. But if OTAs wasn't pretty and the preseason wasn't pretty, and he's still completing 50% of his throws, I would be like, all right, let's sign Jimmy Garoppolo to a longer deal and draft another quarterback. You tell me as an offensive lineman, and you were on the Panthers, the Vikings, the Chiefs, the Giants. Did you know early, you wouldn't say it privately, but as an offensive lineman, did you know early, this young quarterback, how long did it take, Geoff, for you to know, got it, don't have it?
Oh, very quickly. And unfortunately, it's maybe a lot of positions where you feel that way. And the guys get better, of course, but there's little glimmers you see of young players of whether or not they have it, right? Like, especially that position when you're putting there right away. I don't want to call anyone out, but we had Jimmy Clausen in Carolina, and it just didn't go well. Like, it just didn't go well from the beginning. And they put him in an unfair position to really succeed because they made him start kind of right away and kind of threw him in there very early. He wasn't ready to play quite yet. Now, could you make the argument that players need time to develop? Absolutely. And there are times when you put guys in too early before they have a chance to really get into the NFL system and feel really good about where they are. But that's part of the game now, right? There's no waiting. You are playing right now. If you're a young guy, you very rarely get the Patrick Mahomes treatment of sitting out an entire season. Even Trey Lance got to have most of that treatment in year 1. So you can tell right away whether or not a guy has the it factor. Now, of course, coaching matters, system matters, your offensive line matters, your weapons matter, but you can tell early on if that guy just kind of has that prerequisite quality of being an elite player.
Well, Joe Burrow is a great example of that, where Albert Breer was on earlier, and his dad tells stories. He was 8-year-old kid, and you could just tell he got the game very, very quickly. Ohio State, they had somebody in front of him, and then LSU, he kind of scuffed his first year. So to your point, but here's where it gets interesting. We can all see after 6, 7, 8 games, Herbert's it, Kyler's good. What's interesting is when you get into a situation like now with the Jets, they're winning, but they're not letting Zach Wilson beat them. They've taken the ball out of his hands. You can see the way the Jets are coaching. Or the Giants, where they're not taking it out of Daniel Jones' hands. They're not. But there's limitations on what I see. When you look at I think the Giants are a coaching story, not a quarterback story. Yes. What would you do if you're the Giants? Do you extend him? What do you do with Daniel Jones?
Oh, I love the Giants offense, man. It is an offense designed around a quarterback. They want to limit his drop back passing to 0. If they can have 0 times Daniel Jones takes a 3 or 5 step drop or 7-step drop, they'll limit all of that, right? It's an offense that wants to limit all of that. They want easy passes for their quarterback. Also, without any really wide receivers and interior offensive line that you don't really trust, and now a right tackle that's hurt. Like, they're doing a fantastic job of finding ways to get the ball out of his hands quickly, find guys open, do creative things with the Wildcat, with formations. There was a point in this game on Sunday when they ran the same play like 7 times in a row.
Yes.
Just kept running the ball down Jacksonville's throat. And I love it. It's a 100% a coaching thing. And they're going to have to make a hard decision at the end of the season. I think it will be, hey, let's find someone else. I don't think it's a slight about Daniel Jones, but you mentioned like Joe Burrow, right? These guys that are at the top of their game, and you need one of those guys to win a Super Bowl, at least to be in the conversation most of the time. They have an elite, like what's Daniel Jones' elite talent? Is it running the football? Well, that's not really a talent you kind of win Super Bowls with, right? So he doesn't have kind of that elite talent, elite attributes where you feel comfortable with him being in 3rd and 7 times a game against a good team and making 5 of those conversions. So I think they find someone else in the offseason, but 100%, they have a great coaching staff. They are doing a fantastic job of what they're given to start this season.
Okay, now another quarterback who's better than Daniel Jones. The last 12 games Tua's played, he's won 10. I think he's better than Daniel. I think he's also small and limited. So what do you do? It's interesting. I watch them, and I'm like, I've been critical of Tua. I think the Steeler game is classic. You script 15 plays, they score early. Essentially in the NFL, if you get a 10-0, 13-0 lead against an average quarterback, you win the game. And that's what they did. They won the game. What do you do with Tua going in? What do you see with that offense?
I mean, I think you hope that in year 2 next year that he becomes better, right? More confident in the system. Again, he's not going to be one of these guys that you just like have this 4-game stretch in the playoffs, I think, where he leads you to a Super Bowl. I just don't see that quite yet. Look at the AFC conference. Where does he rank as far as quarterbacks right now? Like 8th, 9th in the AFC alone?
Yeah.
He's very good in the scheme. He's very good in this offense. We saw he threw 4 balls that easily could have been intercepted by the Steelers. That changes obviously how we feel about his game. But I think in this offense, though, we've seen whether it's Jimmy G, whether it's a little Jared Goff as well. Like this offense, you can win a lot of football games with a quarterback like Tua. Like I'm not saying they can't win with them, but is he going to take them to the next level? I don't know, but they should let him have another year in the system, obviously. I think he's earned that right so far.
All right, you played under Andy Reid. You know him. He's smart. You love your Chiefs, and your brother was a great player for them. It is interesting watching Mahomes dissect the Niners defense. I may have asked you this before. I feel like Mahomes and Josh Allen and maybe Burrow have separated from the league. They're just simply, the score doesn't matter. Leading, trailing, it just doesn't matter. I feel the score matters with almost every other quarterback not named Burrow, Mahomes, and Josh Allen. What's remarkable about Mahomes is his coachability, his personality. He is such a team guy. He's going to get richer. He's going to get more endorsements. Do you think he falls prey to any of that? I mean, he looks like you almost knock on wood with him and go, we literally won the Powerball with Mahomes. Does he have a hole?
I don't think so. I mean, look at his career so far, right? He was the MVP in his first full season. He started through 50 touchdown passes. He made a Super Bowl in year 2 and won that Super Bowl. He made a Super Bowl in year 3, and last year he made the AFC Championship game and lost in that kind of horrific fashion down the stretch. He came back this year, and he might be better from the pocket. The Niners game was important, I think, for the Chiefs because it was the first game this season where their wide receivers were kind of the reason the offense worked.
Yeah.
And not really Travis Kelce, and he was good, obviously. And, the fly sweeps were well, but the wide receivers, MVS and Juju, were the reason why the offense really flourished. And they haven't had that yet this season, and now they go into a bye week. Andy Reid's great off a bye. Like, this is the first sign, I think, of, okay, we figured out how to use our guys. Back shoulder fade. Mahomes didn't throw that his entire time. He hasn't had to do that.
Yeah.
So he's learning how to play with these bigger wide receivers. And I think that's the takeaway, is that they finally found a way to find the wide receivers in the defense and use them in the best way possible in this offense.
Yeah. What a marriage made in heaven. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, seriously, the great play designer and the great arm talent. Okay. So UCLA and USC ignored you. Oregon didn't. You became a Duck. And they crushed UCLA. They didn't really ignore you. So here's my thing. If Oregon runs the table, certainly possible, because if they run the table, they were humiliated by Georgia. Why in the world am I going to let a team that lost by 150 points to Georgia in the playoff, even if they go undefeated the rest of the way?
If it was USC, you'd put them in there, Colin. Here's the deal with this. This is obviously discussion after Oregon's win. I was in Atlanta. It was ugly, all that. I mean, teams get better, obviously. As an Oregon fan, man, I'm okay with playing like Michigan in the Rose Bowl.
Okay.
Totally fine with me.
Yeah.
11-2, 12-1. You're playing a Michigan team that one loss to Ohio State. Like, sign me up for that. This idea that you can only have a good season if you end up in the playoff, to me, is the wrong way to look at college football. Like, imagine you're 13-1. You have beaten presumably UCLA, Utah, USC in the Pac-12 championship game and Michigan in the Rose Bowl, are you telling me that's not a good season because you didn't play in the playoff? Like, I don't understand this idea of playoff or bust. There are teams like Ohio State, like Georgia, like Alabama, that is their season. But for the under 129 teams, that's not the season. Like, it's okay to play in a Rose Bowl, be successful, and then obviously, hopefully next year is more of a playoff run. So I'm fine with missing on the playoff. Fine with me. If we win the Pac-12, we go play Rose Bowl, we play Michigan, Ohio State, totally fine with that.
A lot of we's in there.
I went to Oregon. I'm allowed to say we. I can say we.
All right, Geoff Schwartz. Say hi to your brother. He was on about a week ago. He's great. Good seeing you, buddy.
Thank you. Take care, bud.
All right, good stuff. He made a really good point on the Chiefs. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.